That's Peterhof in Russia. And I thought one thing that's interesting is that if you go on one of these Baltic cruises now, they don't go to Russia. Okay, here's where we do go. We start out in Copenhagen. We actually, well, you're going to see a little London. We got a layover in London. Copenhagen, then we went up to Stockholm, and then across to Helsinki, down to St. Petersburg, down the Gulf of Bothnia, and then Estonia, and down to Gdynia, Poland, and over to Norway. Barb and I are on the train going into London. We had a long layover in London, and so she had never been there. So I said, well, how about we just do a couple days? And this Acton town was about halfway between Heathrow and downtown London. And we found this nice, cheap hotel. This was a while ago, so if I tell you prices, they're more. But we were that far from the train station. And so we just, tootled our bags over there. And then we hopped right away on the train into London, and we were in Westminster Abbey. We got there just in time for church on Sunday. And as we come out, that section above was added somewhat more recently, and it has more famous recent saints. And then we walked up past, there's number 10 Downing Street. Has a lot of, you can flip this light off now, because I got my button on it. That guy wasn't Hyde Park, he was just rattling on. And the horse guards are right in that area also. And then we moved up to, that's the National Museum, and St. Martin in the Fields Church. And I've eaten there a few times. Down in the crypt, they have a nice cafeteria. We had wonderful chicken dinners for about $7 back then. And it looks like a crypt. It has the vaulted ceilings. This is St. Paul's Cathedral. We took the bus. We bought bus passes. Now, I think if you don't have a bus pass, one ride on the double-decker is like $8. So you need to get bus passes. This was in St. Paul's. We went to Evensong. If you go to a service, you don't have to pay to get in, other than when they pass the plate. But otherwise, you pay to get in these places. I think Westminster was like about $10. We were going to go on the Jack the Ripper walking tour, but a cold front came in, and we weren't ready for it. That's at the Shakespeare Inn. That was my steak and kidney pie. And right across from Victoria Station. So, being we weren't dressed for the cooler weather, we went back to Acton Town, to our neighborhood. When you get out into the suburbs in London, that's where you find more of the ethnic communities. It's very expensive, and now London has a deal where if you want to drive in there, you got to pay bucks. This was just one of the houses in the neighborhood. We went for a walk. Now we're heading back in. We start on the surface, and then we go down under. And we got off at the Blackfriars pub. There's the Blackfriar. And then we're going to walk across the Millennium Bridge. It's a pedestrian bridge. And after they opened it, they had to close it because it wobbled. And that's the Tate Modern Art Gallery. It used to be a steam place like we had down there. And that's some new art that they just put up, I think like the day before. Now, the museums are free. There's the New Globe Theater. The American director, Wanamaker, he asked a cab driver one time to take him to the Globe Theater, and they said, well, that burned down in 1666. And he said, well, you need one. So he built it. And the thing to do if you want to save money is stand outside, and people buy standing room tickets, groundling tickets, and they get tired of standing there. So then they come out and they give their tickets away so you can get in and see a little of it. That looks like, oh, they call that the Gherkin. And then since the museum was free, that was brand new too. Really inspiring art. Oh, we're in the theater. We took a tour. Anything you see that looks like marble isn't. It's wood covered with to make it look like marble. Anybody could have marble. This was special. And they have seats up right where the stage is because rich people went there not to see the play, but to be seen by everybody. And they were doing Richard III right then. And it was raining. So if you buy the groundling ticket, you get rained on. Now we're in the Tate Modern Museum. Some of those I could do. Maybe not that one. Basketballs in glass. And now we're heading to the old Cheshire Cheese for lunch, rebuilt in 1667 after the fire. And that's Samuel Johnson, Dr. Johnson. He wrote one of the first dictionaries in the English language. He sat there on that end seat, like day after day, because he lived around the corner. And they also have it marked where Charles Dickens sat when he was there. And then what do I have? I don't know what I have there. Barb has fish and chips. And plenty of them. And a famous British dessert, spotted dick. That's spotted dick. This is the new City Hall, and it's fondly called the glass testicle. You know, the British can't ever call anything what it really is. And we were to meet here at the tube station for Tower Bridge. And there we go. And part of our trip, our little tour, it was about 8 pounds. And we got a boat ride up the river. That's the Tower of London. Only like 7 or 8 people were ever executed there. And they had the Norman Keep. That's where they kept people named Norman. And now we're down by the eye in the sky, except they called it the eyesore in the sky. And that's New Scotland Yard. And they had to go with New Scotland Yard because in the old one, somebody stole all the toilet seats and they didn't have anything to go on. See, you take a walking tour and you learn all this stupid, silly crap. I love these walking tours. Now here in London, London Walks, they charged, like maybe about $10. But some of the cities have free ones, discovery tours. I did a free one in Paris. And there's Big Ben with a little bit of blue sky. And it was originally supposed to be named after someone named Richard. Okay, you can go with that one. And this is part of that complex. This is, I think, St. Margaret's Hall or something like that. When the Queen Mum, not Elizabeth's mother, when she died, she was laid in state there. And people, like 100,000 people came by her. They lined up across the bridge and down the river on the other side. And that point up there, after Oliver Cromwell messed things up in England back in the 1600s, later on, when the king was restored, they dug him up, cut off his head, and they put it up there as a reminder, don't cause a revolution. And I love these signs, it really helps. Now, they're all the ones that are more modern figures, and Martin Luther King is like right in the middle there. And this was on our walking tour, the Two Chairman Pub. And this has to do with the sedan chairs that the guys carry. And they would bring the rich person to the cockfighting. And then when it was time to go, the person would be in there and they would go, 1, 2, chair, ho! And that became Cheerio. And here we have, I think this is Georgian architecture. That might be Queen Victoria. And it's a more flattering picture because she was much wider. And I think we're in St. James Park here. That's looking back at Whitehall and where the Horse Guards, the headquarters for them. And there's a little bit of Buckingham Palace, but it's usually only open in August when the Queen well, now it's the Queen, when they're up in Scotland at Balmoral. And there are some of the Horse Guards. I've never been to the big changing of the guard. I kind of avoid things with lots of people. So this was pretty good, the changing of the Horse Guards. They were practicing for the Queen's birthday. And then we went to this Belgian-style restaurant, and the early bird special, that was bangers and stumpf. It was mashed potatoes with vegetables in it. And it was between 5 and 7, and you paid whatever time it was when you got there. We got there at 5:30, so we paid £5.30. And you got that and a beer. And we went to a show at night, Mum's the Word. It was cute. It had a whole bunch of British soap opera people in it. I think we got a bargain ticket. Oh, this is back on the subway, going back. Now, we have flown to Copenhagen, and we're on the ship, and we're leaving. There's now a bridge, there it is, that connects Copenhagen to Malmö, Sweden. And you see everywhere. There's a little bit of Sweden, although you will see a little bit more. The yellow is probably rapeseed, which they use to make ethanol, and canola oil. There is Hamlet's Castle, Elsinore, or Helsingborg, something like that. It's probably about 11 o'clock at night, because this was end of April, beginning of May. Now, we did not dock in Stockholm. We docked about an hour away, so we had to change some money and buy some train tickets. About $11, I think it was. And this is the City Hall in Stockholm. And all of the Nobel Prizes, except for peace, are given here at Stockholm City Hall. The other one is done in Norway, in Oslo. And here we have a clock there. This is the wedding room. They have 20 weddings here on Saturday. Now you can have the deluxe wedding, which is 3 minutes, or you can have the budget wedding, which is 20 seconds. So, okay, folks, you're together, you're married. And in this room, this is, I think, the one where they have one of the banquets with the Nobel thing. They have painted on the opposite wall the same thing you would see if you were looking out the window. So the people on each side of the table have the same view. And then I think this is where they actually present the prizes. And this was an interesting sort of mosaic. The one half is Eastern and the other half is Western. Famous landmarks. Now we're outside the City Hall. And I think we also bought like transport passes for the day. That's a couple that ate dinner with us. He was an Episcopal priest, and she was on her 4th husband. And they didn't agree on anything. Oh. That's the palace in Stockholm. but we couldn't get in. It was closed. And this is Gamlastan. You see, I take pictures of weird things. And this is the Royal Church, where they bury the royalty. And we're inside there. And there are a couple of them up there in front with statues on the tombs. And Gustavus Adolphus, there's a college in Minnesota named after him, so he must have been kind of important. And then we hopped on a boat. We had packed our lunch from the ship. When they don't say you can't do that, we usually pack our lunch. And we ate on the boat, and there's the one where we were. And one of these is the German church, and one of them is the cathedral. That's looking back on the old part of town. And we went past amusement park. Now we're at the Vasa Museum. And that was the Vasa, a model of it. The Vasa was built like several hundred years ago. And they built it very fancy, and they had it in the harbor. And on the maiden cruise, when they sailed out from the pier, it was top heavy, and it rolled over and sank. And so probably about 30 years ago, they pulled it up. And they cleaned it all up, and they made figures of what it would have looked like if they hadn't all sunk. And so then they cleaned it up, and they built the museum just for this. And those are some of the carvings. And that's the Nordic Museum, which is right across from this. This is the Vasa Museum, very modernistic. And now we're back on the ship, and we're heading out through the Swedish archipelago. Lots of islands. And then when we wake up the next morning, we're in Finland, Helsinki. And we took a bus. We didn't do the ships thing. We just took a bus for a couple dollars, and that's the Lutheran Cathedral. This is the Russian Orthodox Church. That's the one I have on my shirt. And those are all the icons. All the Orthodox churches always have icons. I took a tour of the one in Marblehead one time, and the priest said, "Don't look at these icons. They're cheap, they're plastic. The people bought them, they donated them, so we have to have them." You can see what food was going for, a little higher than what you're seeing there. But that wasn't too bad, because Finland's pretty expensive too. All the Nordic countries are very expensive. White asparagus, it was springtime. Restaurants have, that's the copper ceiling dome of the rock church. And that's why it's the rock church. It was cut out of rock. And when the builders went to the town council to get a permit to build this, they said, "What do we need another Lutheran church that nobody goes to?" And he said, "Well, if we build this, they will come." I think they borrowed that line from somebody. And this is where I'd love to have you. She's playing a song I don't know, that I could never play in a million years. And she was wearing a purple velvet dress, just for me. So Barb and I, we bought a bus pass for the day, and we're here. But then she played Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. And I went up to her and I asked her, I said, "Would you just play me a couple bars of A Mighty Fortress?" She says, "Oh, I have to hurry, I'm in such a hurry, but I'll show you where to turn it off and you can play all you want." So that's where I got my idea about playing organs places. And then the tour came in from our ship with all these people we knew, and we had a hymn sing. One other woman could play, she could play. I played Jesus Loves Me, Amazing Grace, and maybe one or two others. And she could play lots of stuff. And we had a Christmas carol sing. It was just lots of fun. Anthony tried so hard to find a way that we could get the sound, but it's blasting away and there was no way to turn it down. There I am. I'm doing Amazing Grace, but it doesn't really sound like it. Until you get to the last two notes. I've been playing all these years. I've been playing the organ at church for 40-some, but not good without music. Not too good with it either. And that's the outside of the rock church. Lots of rock climbing going on. And we packed our lunch again from the ship. And then we took the bus to the park, and that's the Sibelius Monument. Sibelius is the one, Finlandia. A lot of schools have that for their alma mater. And we're going to hop back on the bus again. And we rode past some of the Olympic sites from 1952. And we came back to the Lutheran Cathedral, and it has blue sky now. And there's the organ. A lot of the people that went on the tour and went there, they said, boy, that church is pretty plain. Well, churches that were built after the Reformation have a tendency to be much more plain. There's Luther, and the other statue was Melanchthon. And if you go to the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany, the two of them are buried right across from each other. He was his right-hand man. We heard a medieval concert here. And outside, that's the Esplanade. And this was one of the first warm, sunny days of spring. And so everybody was out, sunning themselves and eating at cafes. And excuse my bad photography here. This is a boo-boo. It's still a boo-boo. That's the Smolny Cathedral. And the work didn't get done. We were there on the day that they started celebrating the 300th anniversary of St. Petersburg. And so they were fixing up all the buildings. This side is all done. And the Smolny, it's not a cathedral now, it's a theater. And some of it didn't get done. But there's the Church of the Spilled Blood. It's really the Church of Our Savior. But a czar was shot right out in front of it, so it's called the Church of the Spilled Blood. And they were almost as bad in Russia as they are in Jamaica. With bugging that. Except Jamaica, it's always $1, $1. Well, here it was like $5, $5. And let's see, I think that was the top of the St. Peter and Paul Church. I think I have another picture of it though. This is St. Isaac's. Many of the churches are now museums, or under the Russians all those years, the Lutheran church was a swimming pool. And I know somebody that visited there after when it went back to being a church, and he said, it still smells like chlorine. It's awful. And, but between 100 and 150 are still churches. And that's Nevsky Prospect, the main street. St. Petersburg was built by Peter the Great on a swamp. And I think that building down there was the one where Rasputin was. And like he came out and jumped in the water. There was McDonald's. That was the old love boat. It was called the Discovery. We run into that boat because we went on the love boat way back when.
What kind of beer is
I don't know. That is Putin's summer place. Or maybe that one was. They're playing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. I'll tell you, they know when they got an American audience. And this is now at Peterhof. This is the place that Peter the Great tried to outdo Versailles. He thought the European kings really knew how to live, and so he did a lot of things patterned after them. And when they knew the Germans were coming, they gathered up all this gold, maybe not that, but they gathered up the gold statues everywhere and they hid them in mines and things to keep, but still the German hierarchy moved in to Peterhof and trashed it, really trashed it. But there's like the gold ones that they hid. And it took years and years and money to restore Peterhof. But they sure, this is inside. I think that was Peter the Great. I think, if I get my history right, somebody probably knows it a lot better, but Peter's wife was a Catherine, and she was German. And they encouraged immigration from Germany because Peter thought the Germans were way better farmers than the Russians were. And so they encouraged a lot of Germans. We had a pastor at a church named Baczynski, but his family's original name was Martin, and they moved to Russia and became Baczynski. But then when they were supposed to go in the German army, then they came over here. And one of those places there, in one of those things, I bought a used Russian cross for $10. And so that was the first cross I bought for my cross collection. I do a program on that too. We went to a folk show that night. And I'm sorry you can't hear it. But there are a couple funny things to see. The Cossack dancers, they're the ones that run around while they're sitting down. It was between this and going to the ballet for an extra charge thing, and I like this. I'm not a huge ballet fan. Yeah. This is called the Grandfathers. And just a little bit more dancing. And there's the Love Boat again. It was the Pacific Princess. And this was a huge port. The dock for the cruises is way outside of St. Petersburg. And if you want to go on your own, you had to buy a visa for $129. But if you did the ship's tours, then you didn't have to get the visa. And we paid for 5 trips. I think we paid about $280. But we felt it was worth it. We're probably not going to be back there again. And this is our tour the last day. Some places that we saw in the yucky weather the day before, we're seeing in the sunshine, that's the St. Peter and Paul Fortress and also the St. Peter and Paul Church, and that's where the royal family that were all assassinated back in 1917, something like that. They're all buried there now. They found them. And we're at the Hermitage, which was, there are 117 staircases. And the main part was originally the Winter Palace. That's where they lived. And then Catherine the Great bought so many paintings that they added on. And that actually was added on as a museum. If you stood in front of every exhibit for 10 seconds, it would take you 3 years. And we have tulips. Some of my friends went, oh, that's a Da Vinci, the only one they have. Some of my friends went there in the summer, and it was like 90 degrees outside, and they did not have air conditioning in there. I can't imagine that with all the paintings. Oh, that hallway was patterned after one in the Vatican. I think this is the room that was partly donated by the American oil man, Armand Hammer. He had a real thing for the Russians. Now it's Sunday, and everybody is getting ready for this big 300th anniversary. There's going to be a big parade, and people were just out everywhere. And we're going to there. It's it's called a mansion, but it's more like a villa. And one of the czars, Alexander, had it built for his mother-in-law. Oh, he's definitely all out and enjoying the sunshine. That's the kitchen, and it's connected to the main building by a tunnel, and that's the stables. And we all came here for tea. And she's playing pretty music. That's the next generation babushka. Those windows were kind of goofy looking through, and it reminded me, it looked like an impressionist painting. And here we are with our tea. And of course, they have to get all of us in on it. There's my friend Barb, clicking and clacking. They had these big TV screens set up all over so you could see the activities going on elsewhere in the city. And this is White Russian Nights. We're getting on to June 21st. It's like practically all night. Now we're in Estonia, and this was supposed to be on my program today. That was the Fat Margaret Wall or something like that, fortress. And our ship was docked very close to the old town, so we just struck out here on our own. And I think I need to sit. Tallinn, Estonia. And I'll tell you, the Estonians, the Latvians, and the Lithuanians are very scared right now. They're terrified. They have done, that's the Russian Orthodox, and they got nice icons too. They have been independent since 1990. Before that, they were under German control in World War II, and then the Russians took over. And life is so much better. That's the Parliament, the Pink Parliament. And this is a school, and I looked in and they were dancing and I had music again. But they're just terrified because their lives have been so much better since 1990. This is in the Turmkirche, the Dome Church, the Lutheran Cathedral. And I'm wearing the cross today that I bought there. After I bought the other one, I wasn't going to buy another cross. They had skyboxes. They're way ahead of their time. And those are the crests of the early founding families. And St. Johannes, that was probably the original name of my church, St. John's. And the organ. I always take a picture of the organ. Now, that's the new roof of the church. The old one, when they took it off, the men cut the metal into crosses. And then the ladies macrameed some necklace things for them. And that's why I bought one, because it was helping to fund the new roof, and it was made out of the old roof. It was only $6. This is the old Hansa restaurant. A friend of mine had eaten here, and he said, oh, you got to eat there. But we didn't. And this last trip we were going to, but Louise wasn't big on the menu. She didn't exactly like it. And our guide had recommended that we go to this little place in the town hall called the Three Dragons. And so we went there instead, because we were going to have a big meal at night with the tour. And so we didn't want too much. We just had some elk soup. But this is the bus tour from the ship, or the walking tour. And that's their sampler plate. Different kinds of eggs. And I think there's some caviar there. And now we are in Poland. We're in Oliwa, Poland. We docked at Gdynia on the coast, and then we had to take a train into Gdansk. But we stopped here at Oliwa. I had read in a guidebook about the organ concerts every day at noon. And this is one of the longest churches in the world. And right now there's fantastic organ music going on. And then it's like those organ pizza places used to be. There was stuff all around doing things to the music. There you see some brass instruments. They weren't playing, but they were just moving around a little bit. When we got off the ship, we were with the other couple, and a guy came up and he said, I'll take you all around for the whole day for $50. We should have done that. We did a lot of walking. Now we're in Gdansk, and Rick Steves, this is his new favorite city in Poland. He just loves this city. And it was pretty neat. All these places had these giant stone porches, and it was, now this is inside the church, and this is how long it is. It supposedly will hold 25,000 people. Now that might be piled up on top of each other, but that's what they said. Big, they like big crucifixes. The windows look modern, though. They might have been blown out during the war, because a lot of the churches have very modern windows. And there's the organ way up there. I found out if you're not there for a service, you don't likely get to play it, because they're always locked up and they don't let you. That's looking up. There's Adam and Eve with their fig leaves. This was carved by a guy on death row way back in like the 1500s, and the town council was so impressed with it that they didn't execute him. That's the old organ. And I love that picture. Here's their Pieta version. This is supposed to be the largest brick church in the world. And again, the streets walking through Gdansk were just very picturesque. And those are the downspouts. They empty into these fierce-looking critters. And then it goes down into the drainage. This is not on the sea, but those canals and whatever go out to the sea. That's the Royal Chapel. That's our picture on the boat. I take pictures of them instead of buying them. As we're leaving Gdansk, or Gdynia, that is the island of Hell. And there's a tower with bells, and so that's known as Hell's Bells. I had wanted to go there too, but we didn't have time. We walked too far. Now we're heading to Oslo, and here's another big bridge. I don't even know what it connects. Probably the mainland to some islands. Now we're in Oslo, and we're right downtown on a Thursday. And we're wondering, where is everybody? Well, it was Ascension Day. So in Germany they call it Himmelfahrt, because Himmel is heaven and Fahrt is to travel. And so we went out to Frogner Park. There are probably people here who've been to Frogner Park. And now I can't remember this something. The sculptor. He sculpted, they're all nude. And he sculpted gobs of people doing all sorts of things. But putting clothes on was too much trouble. He was good at nude. And then the train we were going to take to come back was not in operation. So we ended up walking a ways. And now, the bell is ringing in the tower for people to go to church on Ascension Day. And we were going to tour the castle, Akershus, which is right on the waterfront, and it's right next to where our ship is docked, and you'll see that in a minute. But we found out, since it was Ascension Day, there's our ship right there, and we were leaving at like 1 o'clock, so we wanted to be close. And so they were having a service in the church, and, come on, move that way a little. Oh, now we're in the church. And let's see if we're stopped. I was just going to stop it in a minute. We're stopped. Oh, right there. Okay. This was a youth choir, a Norwegian youth choir, and they were singing, they were practicing for the service, and they were very good. I remember when I took my son when he was 10 years old to Legoland in Denmark, and we were waiting in line. He said, "I never saw so many blonde people in all my life." Quite a few there. And then I'll just show a speck of a church full. Don't see that too often. And the people were singing, and I was trying to sing in Norwegian, so maybe it's good we don't have sound. But they were singing, "Praise to the Lord, the Almighty." And I've heard that now in Norway. They sang it in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. They sang it in Slovenia, and I've heard it in Germany. So that must be a very popular hymn in Europe. And that is basically all. This was like 2004. And I know, it's a long time ago. But a lot of things, those old buildings, they don't change a whole lot. So the prices go up, that's the main thing. And I had a clip on the end of that one. About 2 days after we got back from the Baltic trip, Louise was down at Fifth Third Field throwing out the first pitch. because the next day, she and her grandson Mitch started out on a 15,000-mile, 30-day trip around the country to visit all the Major League Baseball parks. Louise and her husband had always wanted to do that, and he died quite young. And so Mitch did that for her, and so that was her last big trip. But this was her last big international trip that she did. And it was just amazing. Yeah.
Are you still traveling, and what's your plans for this year? Where are you going this year?
My legs aren't happy. That's why I said that. My hips aren't happy, my knees aren't happy, and my feet aren't reliable. So I haven't done a whole lot. Plus, travel the prices have just... Now, right away coming out of the pandemic, there were some really good prices. You could go on round-trip 7-day Alaska cruises for like $300 and some. From Seattle even. You didn't even have to fly to Vancouver from Seattle. Those prices are way up. And so many of the prices are just as for... And I could spend more, but I don't enjoy things as much unless it's a bargain. I don't like to pay for things that I don't need to pay for. And so transatlantic cruises are still some pretty good bargains. You can get some 16, 17-day cruises for maybe $700 or $800, sometimes even less. And yeah, of course you have to fly, but you only got to do the long flight one way. You fly over to Europe and then you sail back and you come back from Florida. So if you like sailing, that's still a pretty good bargain. And one thing I'll tell you, when you look at prices, I did all these things every week in the internet, and I noticed all of a sudden the prices jumped. Well, they are required by law now to include the taxes in the price that they publish. So most of the taxes were around $200 for cruises. So that's one reason that you do see the higher prices on things. Any other questions? Gee, you mean I told you everything right now? Yeah.
You said in Oslo that the people were, where were all the people?
It was a holiday. It was Ascension Day.
Out of town or what?
No, they just weren't on the street. They didn't have to go to work. No work, no school. Ascension Day is a lot bigger places than it is here. And even the one in August, in the Catholic religion for Mary, that's called Maria Himmelfahrt in Germany. We were there one time and we were ready to hit the road, and our lady at the guest house, she said, now you know nothing's going to be open today because it's Maria Himmelfahrt. So that's the fun of travel. You're supposed to look up the holidays ahead of time so you don't run into all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I've been listening to Rick Steves a lot lately, so I catch on to that. Anything else? So if I'm still around next year, I will do that program next year. Because I don't think I'm going anywhere.